Okay, I declare the meeting open and welcome everybody to our meeting. I'm going to invite Councillor Pemberton to give us an acknowledgement of country, and she's going to do it in a more special way than we normally do.
Is that on? Hello. Which is Nala Kadich Wajak Mort, Kane Kadak Nija Walilap. Borda were Jinning Wajak Kadajing were Knitting Bula Yay.
Great.
And that is our acknowledgement translated into Noongar.
So we thought we might do that in future to be a little bit more acknowledging of the people who used to live here before we all came. Thank you, Councillor Pemberton. Attendance, apologies and leaves of absence. We have Councillor Thompson will be arriving but a little late from his meeting. I think that's the only issue, isn't it? Councillor Vucic is an apology, but we have Councillor Sullivan in her place. Disclosures of interest by members. We have none. Responses to previous questions taken on notice. We have questions answered within the agenda. Is there any more discussion on that? No? Thank you. Public question time. I believe we have Mr. Levikas in the online. Andrew, would you like to yeah, would you like to unmute and ask your question? Yeah, we're still waiting to hear you. I think he's. Oh, is it? Just a moment. We can't hear you yet. Are you? No. Yeah, I think it's a problem at our end. If you leave your microphone on, and we'll see if we can sort it out here. Where is Mel? Shall we ask him to speak? Yep. Andrew, could you just say something to see if we can hear you? No, we can't hear you yet. Yeah. Read the whole lot, or just the gist of it out, maybe.
We do,
Yeah.
We'll just wait another minute.
Okay, can you speak again, Andrew, so we can hear you now? No, we still can't hear you. We've got something happening.
Oh, heard something then.
Yes, we can hear you now. That's great.
Great.
There you go.
I can hear you now. Just. That's okay.
All right. Would you like to present your questions? We do have a copy of the questions in front of us, so you won't need to.
Yeah, sure. No, it would be good if I could.
Yep. Go ahead.
Start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. First of all, just on FPOL 2205-3 regarding the rates and the increase. Just wanting to highlight that the increase proposed is also on top of Landgate's 3-yearly review of GRV, which is due now, which will most likely push the values upwards, considering rents have gone through the roof. Hence an even higher increase for the next 3 years. This is on top of 10 years plus of above CPI increases, just compounding each year with no respite. Question 1, being told year after year that individuals can apply for hardship doesn't cut it. Considering this council has used provisions of COVID to waive rates and charges for certain inner city businesses, when are individual ratepayers going to see some respite to alleviate household expenses and pressure on family budgets? Question 2, are these increases due to the sell-off of assets for King Square / Wal Yallup development and the city finances that were drained? Question 3, what is being implemented to ensure ratepayers are not continually burdened with hefty increases? The next item I wanted to talk about was FPOL 2205-6, which was in relation to the elected member policy. I did notice looking at this that Regulation 34D, refers to a local law and not a policy that's now written into the Local Government Act 1995 as an amendment. Apparently, the City of Fremantle is the only local government in WA with only a policy and not a local law as required to bring it in line with the Local Government Act. Question 1, is the City of Fremantle in the process of implementing this as a local law? And 2, can the policy just be converted to a local law? And 3, what are the implications of doing this or not doing this? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Just ask the Acting Director of City Business to make a comment about the first question, or the first set of questions, rather.
Through the chair, just to, we will take those questions on notice and provide a written response. However, just in regards to the Landgate revaluations, the Valuer General has pushed the revaluations back a year, so that will not factor in. However, regardless of that happening, we would simply change the rate in the dollar to factor in those increases.
Okay, I'll ask the CEO to make a comment as well.
Just through the chair, you might recall back in the original year of COVID, the Minister for Local Government asked local governments to maintain their rates at the prior year level, which we did concur with. So there has been some respite provided through our rates during the COVID period.
Okay, and then we do have some responses to the questions about item 22056 from the Manager of Governance. Or do you want to just put those in writing?
Look, we have provided a written response back to Mr. Lewis on these questions, but through the chair I can answer them quickly as well verbally, and that is the city isn't intending on implementing a local law for its meeting procedures at the moment. That is something that can be considered in the future, but isn't currently being considered by council. Technically, the current meeting procedures could be put into a local law if that was what council wanted to consider, but that's not currently occurring. I actually don't have the third question in front of me.
Oh, it's just next to number 2.
Oh yeah. The bottom line. To be fair, in my time here at the City of Fremantle, which is a little bit longer than 15 years, we've always had a policy governing our standing orders or meeting procedures. They've always been effective. Council's always abided by them. And at the time, I considered whether or not they should be a local or not. But in my time here, I've found that council have abided by the procedures just as much as if they're a local law anyway. So the feeling of moving them to a local law probably isn't quite necessary and hasn't been necessary with this council in the past. Don't see it being necessary in the future. It's probably something that council may consider through the changes that are being proposed by the current state government once they see what those changes are.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, and we'll give you back some of these answers in writing. Thank you. So that's public question time. Petitions. I don't believe we have any petitions. Deputations. There are none. Confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the meeting of Finance Policy Operations and Legislation Committee dated 13th of April 2022 have been is moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pemberton. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Elected member communication, Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a brief statement, and I guess for the collective, and I did raise this with the CEO on Friday, which is that I've noticed that the agendas are actually coming out later and later. Sort of been getting, and this week this agenda was particularly unusually late, coming out at about 11 o'clock at night on Friday, and I just think it's pretty poor form, not only just for our own purposes, but the fact that the website actually says that they're available by 5 p.m. on Friday, and I actually haven't noticed them being ready by that time in a long time. So I think we need to kind of review whatever practices are happening in the background so that we actually do meet that expectation and deadline, because 5 p.m. on a Friday is not a convenient time for anybody to be looking at documents and so on. But if you have an item that you know is coming, or you have an interest in or something and you're looking for it, you want people to actually be able to see it when it's published, when it says it's going to be there.
Thank you through the chair. Appreciate the comments made by Councillor Pemberton. It is something we need to improve on, and we have had that discussion internally over the last couple of days. And I can assure you it's something we're treating very seriously.
Great, thank you. Okay, we now go to the items under committee delegation. Do we have, perhaps if we just move through them one by one, it'll be quite quick, I think. Does any, I'll move FPOL 22051. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mofflin. Is there any discussion? No. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. I'll move FPOL 22052. Seconded by Councillor Kamada. Is there any discussion? Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. I've just got a question in regards to the grant and how it's applied, and particularly, and if my reading's correct, that we're proposing to build the changing place pre any other works on the South Beach toilets. Is there? No, that's not the case. No, it's not. Yeah. Sorry. So my question is: are we doing this in conjunction with works proposed for the South Beach toilets as a whole, or is this a separate piece of work that's going to be occurring?
Thank you, through the chair. It's a bit of both, really. So this is an application for grant funding for a standalone change in place facilities, which will be adjacent to the new toilet block. We'd aim to do them both at the same time, or this just after the toilet facility. We did look at building it within the facility, but that compromised universal access with the size of the footprint. So the total cost of 290,000 is for a standalone facility directly adjacent to the new building, and we'll aim to align the building.
Great. Thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. I'll move FPOL 22053, advertising of the differential rate. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Discussion, Councillor Sullivan.
Just some questions first, if I could. The conversation, obviously, about removing the differential rate that relates to the CBD, or sorry, the destination marketing element. My understanding is the city centre commercial rate in the dollar was higher than the normal commercial rate in the dollar, and that the full difference between one and the other was the amount of money that we would raise for destination marketing. As it stands at the moment, the two rates are proposed still to be different, not only marginally. It's 0.096 9.6 cents in the dollar as opposed to 9.8 cents in the dollar. What is the reason for the difference still? Is it just a need to have them slightly different? Or is there actually some residual differential rate that the city centre commercial are paying?
I'll ask the Acting Director of City Business, or the CEO. Thank you.
Just through the chair, to keep it as a differential rate at the moment, we do need to keep it different to other rates, so there is a need for a small margin at the very least. The actual change at the moment is a consequence of the previous valuation change. So you know that when the property values change, the GRVs change, we discount each of the differential rate factors by their percentage change in valuation. So what has occurred in the last valuation change is the commercial industrial properties changed by a different percentage to the CBD properties. So there was actually a slight change. So what we actually did was took the dollar amount out of the CBD rate to recalculate and recalibrate its differential rate, if that makes sense. So there is a slight difference still, and it's an ongoing effect from the last valuation change.
So second question, we obviously have differential rates, but we also have special area rates. The special area rate for the CBD security, that's applied to all properties in the CBD. It's not just commercial, it's commercial and residential, or is it just applied to the commercial properties? Giving you a bit of notice.
Yeah, sorry, I should know off the top of my head, but I don't. I'm going to go out on a limb though and say it should only be to the commercial properties, but we'll check that and come back to you in writing on that.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any further questions or discussion? Councillor Pemberton.
I have a question prior to moving my amendment, and I guess following up on what Councillor Sullivan has just raised. What is the logic in keeping a city centre differential at all, in sense of rather than just simplifying it and making commercial and industrial the same? Just so that I can understand the thinking on that, because you could roll them into one and the same, I guess, if we're proposing to treat them the same.
Council can make whatever determination they want on their differential rate. The reason they're slightly different at the moment is because we're keeping that differential rate factor open, but if council wants to roll into one, certainly could. Yep.
Okay, well, Councillor Pemberton, would you like to move your amendment now so that we can amend the motion?
Yes, I will. If I can have a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Kamada.
Thank you. And yes, as per the discussion in the email, and I guess for the purpose of public information and so on, this really is about capturing the discussion that has been happening within the elected member body for the last few weeks around recognising that the destination marketing budget is a really valuable one, but provides service to the whole entire city. Obviously, there are numerous businesses throughout the city, including in the other neighbourhoods and so on, which get promotional opportunities through it. And there is also a flow-on benefit even to the residents as far as increases in residential land values and house values as we make Fremantle a more popular place to live and visit, and so on. And likewise, this is around recognising that the CBD also faces additional challenges, everything from paid parking through to higher rents and so on. And so this is about trying to equalise the playing field a little bit and ensure that all ratepayers who benefit from the destination marketing program actually contribute towards it rather than just solely the CBD.
Yes, thank you. The amendment is under discussion at the moment. Is there any further comment? Okay, all those in favour of the amendment? Sorry, Councillor Sullivan.
So the comment that I made, I'm not sure if it's been modified, it hasn't. So the comment that I made to staff and to Councillor Pemberton was that the way it currently reads, it sounds like we've made the decision, and I think Councillor Pemberton was intending to modify it slightly so that it's in line with the rest of the motion, which is we're proposing to do that. We're not making any decision at this stage.
For not actioning that. Yeah, if we can just change it to say that council proposes to no longer
Thank you.
impose.
Sorry, I couldn't see the motion because I can't see this up here. Yeah.
But,
okay, with that minor change.
Sorry. But just to clarify as well, we still have a city centre commercial differential rate, don't we? Which is different to what this is saying. It's saying we're no longer imposing the CBD differential rate.
For the destination marketing. That's specific to the destination marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's most probably.
Okay, so that council is no longer proposing to include
the cost of destination marketing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because we still have it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so if we move it round to that, that council proposes to no longer
Not to
include.
include.
Sorry? Not to include.
Of destination marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
That's right.
As it stands.
Okay. Great. So with that change, is there any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favour? It is unanimous. Thank you. So now we go back to the motion as amended. Is there any further discussion? Noting that for any of the public who might be watching, that this is for advertising purposes. It's not a decision at this stage. All those in favour of the motion, thank you. Those against? Councillor Thompson's against. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to FPOL 4, the adoption of the local law for the control of shark fishing. I'll move that item, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. Is there any discussion? No, although Councillor Sullivan, sorry.
Thank you. In the public comment period, I'm not sure which government department emphasised the concern about our capacity to be able to identify that someone actually is fishing for sharks, as opposed to just fishing. And we've talked about including the issue of the wire traces and all that, and I have my own views on that, and I might speak to that later. But my concern is I'm not sure, and I'm seeking clarification as to what measures we actually do have in there to be able to determine that someone is specifically fishing for shark as opposed to any other fish or ray in the ocean.
Could we go to the Manager of Governance? Thank you.
Through the chair, I've had it on good authority from the manager of community safety team that it is very obvious when someone is fishing for sharks. The gear they have, their stance, the way they're fishing, it's very obvious. So a few photographs would allow the city to take something like that to court and be confident that they could prove that this person was fishing for sharks and not for other types of fish.
Thank you. I'll also invite the CEO to make a comment.
So my recollection is the Department of Local Government are the people who made that comment, aren't they? The reason that we placed items in the local law that talked about having a Y trace and those sorts of things was for that determination. So it is difficult to say you're absolutely fishing for sharks and what your intent is, but that's why we've specified the gear being used as being the determination for that purpose.
Thank you. We have Councillor Kamada wishing to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Look, I'm supportive of this, and I think you see with the submissions received by the Fremantle residents, 92% of people were in support. But my only concern is the policing of this type of fishing. And I noted in the financial implications that shark fishing generally is undertaken outside of regular patrol hours and will require additional patrols during peak times. So I'm just a little bit concerned about how we can actually ensure that we can police this properly. I know it sends a message, and I think that's great because it's not a good look to have people fishing for sharks in an area that in the metropolitan area where people swim. So yeah, that's my only concern. I just more of a comment than anything.
You would like a comment this evening? Yes. Oh, okay. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, and look, I'm very supportive of this, and I've been very concerned about the behaviour of, and I am a fisherman, and I do use wire traces, even if it's just to catch a tailor or sometimes even something smaller. So the notion that just because you're using a piece of wire next to your hook that you're fishing for sharks, of course, is not entirely true, but I don't use the sort of gauge that a shark fisherman is likely to be using, which obviously is significantly heavier than for a very small tailor or the like. And that's why I have this sort of concern about how specific we can actually target a shark fisherman. But the reality is the sort of behaviour that's going on out there, and it's not just people targeting sharks, it's also recreational cray fishers who are regularly spotting sharks coming up behind their pots and then thinking it would be good fun to sort of play with them and feed them and chuck their bait over and do all sorts of things. And it's just creating a learned behaviour amongst sharks and exacerbating what should just be a natural reality is that, if you're in the ocean, then there's a risk. This risk has been significantly exacerbated by the behaviour of irresponsible fishers. Most fishers are responsible. There are some who aren't, and there are just some who just don't even get it. They don't even make the correlation between the sort of their behaviour and the next poor soul that jumps off a boat and goes spearfishing or snorkeling or just swimming up and down the ocean. So that is why we need to bring this in, and I'm glad that it's been brought forward. I suspect in time we will see a state law that covers it comprehensively through the Fishing Licences Acts, but until then we need to do it at the local level.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Lorver, which item in particular were you here for, or are you just happy to come along and... Oh, good. Excellent. I'm just making sure I hadn't missed something. Yeah, good. Excellent. The next item is item 5, the Delegated Authority Register Review. I'll move that item, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Is there any discussion? All those in favour? It is unanimous. Thank you. I'll move item 6, the Elected Member Related Policy Review, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Would you like to second that? Is there any discussion on this item? For some reason, it's got here proposed amendment by Councillor Pemberton. Yeah, and I couldn't find it in the. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Yep. We've. Yeah. Is it? Do you have it on your screen? No. Could you read it out? Perhaps I can't see up on the. Oh, okay.
So, oh yes, it's now on the screen. So this was about how the complaints were handled in the process of that, and my desire to try and put a timeline on it that is reasonable to implement, both in terms of practical uses among staff, but also in giving fair and proper process to the parties that are involved in complaints. And the suggestion is that it should be dealt with in a timely manner within 12 weeks, unless there is particularly complicated circumstances or something, but that we should be able to deal with them within 3 months.
The governance manager, would you like to make a comment?
Just that this fits within the principles of the policy. The only complaints we've dealt with, or council has dealt with under this policy, have, apart from a glitch in when they were reported to council, have actually been dealt with within 12 weeks. I'm confident we can do it.
Okay. So, Councillor Pemberton, you're moving that amendment, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Would you like to second that? Thank you. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All those in favour? The amendment is approved. That makes the motion amended. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. I had a long conversation with Councillor Busick, who obviously was a late apology for tonight, and she was concerned that the policy still needs to be perhaps tightened up a little bit. She was particularly concerned, and in some ways I share her concern, about how we deal with and how we determine situations of vexatious complaints. And she was hoping that she sort of was going to let it go, but then she felt that it was actually more important than she perhaps thought about leading up to the meeting, and that she would like, if it's possible, to be able to sit down with staff and maybe other elected members who would be interested in going through it in a bit more detail. Now, I know this is going to full council anyway, and so there is an opportunity perhaps for her and anyone else to do that between now and full council. But I gave a commitment to raise that aspect tonight, and it's very much about making sure, I guess, a number of things. Making sure that a member of the public who feels the need to make a complaint actually gets some sort of level of support and guidance as to what sort of information they might need to present to have a valid complaint, because it's not easy for a member of the public to suddenly go, I want to complain about something, but I'm up against this bureaucracy and or the politics of the council. They can be rather intimidated by that, and then they may make a very weak complaint in writing, but they actually might have something quite justifiable to complain about, It's just that they haven't been able to actually articulate it in a way that's going to be helpful to a process. And then they just get dismissed. And of course, that's not transparent. It doesn't deal with the situation or the like. Another aspect that Councillor Busick and I guess probably share the view on is that sometimes a complaint could very reasonably be resolved without too much referral, particularly to consultants. Simply, almost in-house. It might be through an apology. It might be through that mediation process or the like. And we don't need to automatically rush out to get consultants or to make it a very rigid process. Sometimes it's better not to. So there's a number of things that Councillor Busick and I were talking about, and it did seem that it would be, I think, helpful to have a bit more of a discussion. I know that's very late in the day, and others will rightfully argue, well, you had your opportunity, why didn't you do it before? Well, I know from my perspective, this is probably the least important matter that I'm been dealing with over the last couple of months, and I've been focusing on really high-level strategic stuff. But this stuff's still important because it's only when something happens that we actually need it to work well. So I don't know whether deferring it or at least allowing Councillor Busick and myself and anyone else that's interested to sit down with the manager to talk about it between now and full council. But I did want to flag that it may well be something that Councillor Busick wants to defer at full council.
Yeah, this is a council decision, so there will be an opportunity between now and the council meeting to have some of those discussions. And if at the council meeting it is considered important to defer it, then that can be dealt with at the council meeting. But Councillor Thompson also wishes to speak.
Oh, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, my view is that if there is concern about any policy, it may be just as well to take that one out and defer it to the next FPOL meeting in order to give interested councillors enough time to actually do what's required. So I would actually move an amendment to that, would be that defer adoption of the Council Code of Conduct Division 3 complaint handling to the next meeting of FPOL in order for councillors to make further comment.
Okay. Seconded by the deferral, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Mofflin.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to talk to that and maybe just have a question to staff then as well, because my reading of what the proposed amendments were to the policy were that there was actually a screening process with the complaints officer in place, and that they would, if you like, do that in-house assessment in the first instance. And the issue that Councillor Sullivan spoke to essentially is managed by the policy, the proposed changes to the policy, such that we aren't going to, in the first instance, go out to a consultant to complete an investigation, and that there's the ability for staff, the complaints officers, sorry, to assess those in the first instance. So I'm just wondering if there is actually any need for us to defer if that policy is addressing those issues and questions that have been raised.
Through the chair, you're absolutely correct. The new or the proposed policy puts it back into the city's point of view. So the complaints officer will assess complaints as they come in. If they're considered to be simple complaints, then the complaints officer will deal with those. If the complaints officer is not sure, then they'll be referred up to the CEO for review, who is also a complaints officer. If they're considered to be too complex or more serious than the CEO would like to deal with, that would be when we would, introduce an independent investigator. But on the whole, most complaints we would anticipate being dealt with in-house by the city's complaint officer.
And just further through the chair, we also put in a change that talked about trying to go to mediation first as well. Yeah.
Yes. So you remember the last time we used the current policy, council asked that we try and encourage mediation as a first stop. So we've just tightened that up to say that mediation will be will be used. The complaints officer is in discussions with the CEO to seek some mediation training, just to make that a little bit more, smooth process. And the intention is for mediation and hopefully withdrawal of complaints through to near satisfaction.
Okay, so what's before us at the moment is deferral. Referral, yeah.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm
Yeah,
just referring that that one item on to FPOL to give enough time for councillors who wish to make a further comment. Recognising you and I had a fairly lengthy conversation with the officers about this.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the intent that we had was to make it much simpler, straightforward, less complicated process, so that as the governance manager has mentioned, so we can refer it to the next meeting. So, is there any further discussion on that? All those in favour?
I was just going to comment. I suppose this is going to full council, and that's in 2 weeks' time. Yeah.
No, we're going to refer it to the next FPOL.
Yeah, but I'm saying without this
referral is adopted, it will refer to committee. Otherwise,
yes, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. So if it's referred to the next committee. Yeah. Yes. So we need to.
Yep. Maybe just.
Let's just clarify what we actually are referring.
It's an additional recommendation, which is to refer adoption.
Hang on. Can we just get it clarified that we're going to refer only this particular policy we're talking about to the next FPOL meeting, so that it'll have a month then to have people comment, and the remainder of the items we're going to send on to council. That's what we're saying. So I've just got to get the page.
So we're referring the Council Code of Conduct Division 3 complaint handling policy through to the next FPOL meeting.
Yep.
So if that was the case, I would probably yeah.
So through the chair. So point 1 was the adoption with minor amendments of the other policies. Point 2 was to adopt this one because this policy was actually, there was a policy replacing the current policy, so it was a standalone point. So just a change to point 2 to refer to the next FPOL instead of adopting.
So we could move.
I would. Yeah, I would probably do this. I would make 3-2, 4-3, and 2-4, and make 4 the referral of that policy through to the June FPOL meeting.
Okay. Well, can we just
sorry to do that to you.
I'll remember that we're obviously deferring the other parts, but we will move parts 1, 3, and 4 as 1, 2, 3. And that is seconded by, we had a seconder earlier, Councillor Moughlin. So for those 3, is there any further discussion? Otherwise, all those in favour? Yep. Is there? There's only 1, 2, 3. Oh, 5. That's right. So that's now 4. So that's what we've moved and seconded.
So we do need to treat it as an amendment. And so it was moved as an amendment to the motion by Councillor Thompson, seconded by myself. It needs to be treated as an amendment and then the motion as a whole.
Yes, that's true.
Because it is an amendment. It's not really a procedural motion.
No, it's not. So we could just leave it exactly as it is and just amend it.
It probably sits better at the bottom though.
And reordered is
okay.
fine.
All right. So we go 1, 3, 4, 5. Become 1, 2, 3, 4, and that. And then part 2 becomes part 5, and it is amended as we've discussed. Yes. Councillor Thompson has moved that amendment, And it's been seconded. All those in favour of the amendment? That's unanimous. Sorry? Okay. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried, yeah. And so now we have the amended motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Budget amendments. Okay, we'll now move the budget amendments item 7 for May 2022. Is there a seconder to this? Seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Is there any discussion? All those in favour? That is unanimous. I'll move item 8, and in moving item 8, the Director of Infrastructure, etc., has a change to make. Thank you. And that, well, could we get a seconder and then we'll make the change? Seconded by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through the chair, my apologies. There was an error in the table, so I've just asked the agendas guys just to put up the corrected table in the agenda, in the recommendation rather. 2 of the rows were missing for some reason in the printed version.
Okay.
Other than that, the recommendations are exactly the same.
Stays the same. Okay, is there any further discussion on this item? Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, just a couple of questions out of interest. First one is, when do Perth Glory actually move in to the facility? And secondly, I read about the additional tenant, the Stephen Michael Foundation, and just curious as to what the lease arrangement will be for the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. The Perth Glory started to bump in just after Christmas in terms of the kit, etc., while we were doing some of the works to the offices. The intention is for them to fully occupy and use the facility with the teams when they return for the pre-season training as of the 1st of July. So that's our target, to get those second phase works done.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on this one? Sorry. Yep.
Through the chair, just to answer your second question regarding Stephen Michael Foundation, we've offered them a 3-year lease with another 3-year option on top of that at community rates, essentially, and we are fitting out or dividing a portion of the first floor to occupy them.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Motions of which previous notice has been given. There are none, I don't believe. No urgent business, no late items, no confidential business. And just before we close, the Mayor isn't here tonight, but is she an apology? So she was an apology. Yes, okay, so I didn't pick that up at the beginning of the meeting, so if we could record that as well, thank you. And I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:50. There you go.